Hello, friends. It's Pastor Alex back with another reflection. Today is the day of Pentecost, when the church had its first birthday and when a group of frightened disciples became the springboard which God used to spread the good news of Jesus Christ to the very ends of the earth. And when you stop and think about where all of this began, in some ways you can draw it all the way back to even before creation. In John 1, that Christ was the principle of the Word that existed before creation itself and that was woven into the fabric of reality as life was made and God created the heavens and the earth. In other ways, you can trace it back to Christmas or to Abraham and the covenant or all the way back to the very beginning before time even existed. But I thought today, on this day of the church, when we remember the gift of the Holy Spirit that makes all of us who are Christians be united, that we could remember back to the first followers, the disciples who heard Jesus and listened to him and followed. And so the first of those, of course, were the fishermen that were in Galilee, who left their nets, and Peter, who had been listening to John the Baptist, but left John the Baptist to follow Jesus as the greater teacher. And how much courage it must have taken to leave behind everything that they knew to follow this man who spoke things that were compelling and were true. And I wonder sometimes if, as Christians, we forget that there's a cost to following Jesus, that there's a way in which, if we decide we are going to follow Jesus, that we might have to leave things behind. Our nets, our ways of life that we had before, maybe the parts of ourselves that are best left behind us as well. And so I thought I'd tell a quick story about following Jesus. I remember one week I was at Vacation Bible School and I was teaching, I think they were 5 and 6 year olds. And one of the songs that we sang is, "I Have Decided to Follow Jesus." And the story we told was of those first followers of Peter getting out of the boat and walking briefly on the water before his fears kicked in and he started to sink. And so, if you're in the midst of a fearful time, in the midst of the seas that are raging, don't forget that there's fear every step of the way, even for the disciples themselves. From the first moment of following Jesus, they had no idea what they were getting in for. They would have had no idea that they could have seen Jesus teach and heal in the way that he was going to, and they could have no idea that the way God would reveal God's love to us definitively was upon the cross and in the resurrection that was to come. And then, of course, they could have never seen that they'd be the first folks involved in spreading the good news that God had done something new on Pentecost, on this very day, 2,000 years ago. And so we gather here as God's people, and we tell the story like at Vacation Bible School to a new generation. But each of us is called to remember the same story. I'm going to try to sing, "I Have Decided to Follow Jesus." I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. The world behind me, the cross before me. No turning back, no turning back. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. Though none go with me, still I will follow. No turning back, no turning back. Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? Will you decide now to follow Jesus? No turning back, no turning back. Well, as always, we Try to make a joyful noise to the Lord. And I hope that if you decide today to follow Jesus, that it might bring you peace and hope and love, and that there is a way in which God's truth at Pentecost is true for us as well, that the same Holy Spirit that enabled people from all over the world at Pentecost to understand the good news of Jesus Christ, still the Spirit speaks to us, and still it empowers us to speak truth as well. Truth that's good news in the midst of this world that's so full of bad news. So be at peace and know that God is with you, that God will give you what you need today, just as God gives daily bread. And that ultimately we can trust and believe that in the midst of this broken world that seems so lacking in answers, that there is a greater truth and a purpose at work. And that from the Good Fridays of our lives can come not only the Easter Sundays that remind us that God will set things to the right, but also the days of Pentecost, where we ourselves can participate in something bigger than ourselves and proclaim a new future that can change the world. And ultimately, of course, change our hearts on the way as God calls us back home. So many days that we have on our lives until we reach our eternal home and see Christ face to face. So I hope and trust that that's some comfort to you this day. And I hope that you have a good rest of your Pentecost Sunday, and that the Spirit brings you everything that you need. Have a good day.